Hello everybody. Today I handle the question why live some ALS patients much longer. During this presentation, we discuss the following topics. In persons with ALS, motor nerve cells gradually die, leading to progressive paralysis. Each year there are 3 to 8 ALS patients and 1.5 to 2 new cases per 100,000. Worldwide, there are approximately 250,000 existing ALS patients annually, among which roughly 50,000 new diagnoses. In addition, these numbers are increasing, with approximately 90%. Sporadic ALS surpasses largely the familial version, which is heritable. An ALS patient experiences increasing paralysis. Although the average lifespan with ALS after diagnosis is 3 years and most ALS patients die between 2 and 5 years, a substantial 10% lives 10 years or more and 5% even 20 years and more. I have asked myself several times why this large group is not investigated more. In any case, there must be causes for this phenomenon. Can we learn something from long-living ALS patients? Before the first problems appear, there are already aspects that influence the ALS process. Although the genetic base of sporadic ALS, about 90% of the ALS population, are still unknown, studies about familial ALS suggest that genes have something to do with it. As example, according to a Sardinian research project, the chance to live longer is greater for a TARDBP mutation than with a C9orf72 mutation. Also, the nature and initial location of the mutation might play a meaningful role. The average time of survival of a SOD1 transgenic mouse was considerably longer with a G93C than a L38V mutation. The location of ALS onset might likewise have a relation with lifespan. Various investigations suggest an advantage for spinal onset in the limbs, compared to a bulbar onset disturbing the neck, facial, tongue and breathing muscles. Forced vital capacity, abbreviated FVC, is the maximal volume of air that can be expired after a complete in-breathing. This measure is mostly expressed as a percentage. A value lower than 70% is the sign to start with artificial respiration. Studies support the theory that persons with a higher FVC live longer with ALS. There are however no studies that relate the number of neurons and synapses with the lifespan of an ALS patient. A positive correlation is probably the case. Most ALS patients have their first physical problems between 40 and 70 with a mean of 55 at diagnosis. There are however also ALS cases among young people in their 20s or 30s. From studies, the chance of a faster end increases with a diagnosis at older age. Do not become depressed. This bad mental condition increases cellular stress and may eventually lead to the death, or apoptosis, of nerve cells. The administration of the medication Relutech resulted in a longer life of SOD1 transgenic mice. The medication was however already given from birth. This positive effect might disappear largely if the medication is applied to already sick mice and diagnosed ALS patients. A high BMI, obesitas, unhealthy food, too much alcohol and smoking shorten the lifespan of ALS patients. Adjusting your way of life is therefore advisable. On the other hand, cannabis seems to have rather a life-lengthening effect, on the condition that one becomes not addicted. The recently deceased British physicist Stephen Hawking is probably the ALS patient living the longest. He started his university studies at the age of 17 at the University of Oxford and obtained his PhD in 1966 with his thesis, Singularities and the Geometry of Space-Time, at the University of Cambridge. In 1962, he experienced his first symptoms, but he received his diagnosis of sporadic ALS only in 1963. He lived so officially from his 21st, 55 years with ALS. In 1977, he became Professor Gravitational Physics, and in 1980 Lucasian Professor in Mathematics. On the 30th of September 2009, Hawking withdrew from this function, but he continued working at the university in Cambridge. He and his wife had to move to a flat, because with his wheelchair, which he had to use rather quickly, he no longer could do stairs. Until 1979, his wife Jane could take care of him alone, but later, it became necessary to involve a nurse. In the summer of 1985, Hawking suffered from a life-threatening pneumonia. He survived, thanks to a tracheotomy, but lost his voice in the process, partially due to his speech computer, integrated in his wheelchair. Together with a normal one, he could write in advance and managed to avoid the locked-in syndrome. He added vitamins, minerals, zinc and cod liver oil to his diet, and he avoided gluten, vegetable oil and ready-to-eat foods. In addition, he received both passive and active physical therapy. He was awarded several times in homeland and abroad. He wrote multiple books, among which the bestseller, A Brief History of Time, first published in 1988, is the most popular. Hawking provided also his cooperation to several television series like Star Trek, The Simpsons and Family Guy. In short, he had an exciting and active life with ALS. Danny was born the 23rd of May 1960, after his first experiences of paralysis in fingers and hands. He visited a nerve specialist in 1979. Finally, it was Professor van den Berg, the predecessor of Professor Wim Robrecht of the KU Leuven, who gave him in 1980 his diagnosis of sporadic ALS. He is very religious, and his faith is, together with his magnificent family, his marehold until today. He started with the ALS League of Belgium in 1998. He always did his best to improve the situation of the ALS patients. Accomplishments which were realized thanks to him were, amongst other things, the PABPVB budget for the ALS patient, the foundation of My Assist, the reimbursement for physical therapy, and the establishment of various conventional hospitals for ALS-MS. In 2007, he created, together with his wife Mia and several partners, the ALS Center Middelpunt. From the 1st of January 2019, the new policy for aiding devices, for which he started already in 2003 negotiations with the National Institute for Health and Invalidity Insurance in Belgium, will enter into force. His daughter Evie has largely taken over the medical aspects to get quicker access for ALS to studies for the purpose of their big dream, a cure for ALS. He has at this moment a PAB budget, sits in an electric wheelchair with chin guidance, and stays in an adapted apartment. He lives already more than 38 years with ALS and has, despite a deteriorating health, still plans for the future. I was born in 1959 in Opbrekel. I was 18 when I went to the Conservatory of Ghent, where I obtained a first prize for music theory, clarinet and chamber music. In 1986, I obtained a license degree in physical education at the University KU Leuven. After this, I was mostly working as project leader by the American company Interleaf, specialized in technical publishing. At the end of the 20th century, I started to experience some difficulties during my sport activities. Begin 2000, I received my familial G93C ALS diagnosis by Professor Wim Robrecht in the Gasthuisberg Hospital at Leuven. I stopped working in 2002. started to learn Spanish and the education for adults, and joined a cover band as guitarist. In 2006, I began to study at the Faculty Bioengineering Science at the University KU Leuven. I obtained 2 master degrees, Gene and Cell Technology with a thesis about ALS in 2011, and Food Technology in 2012 with a description about white wine. In 2012, I was permanently condemned to an electric wheelchair. In 2017, my voice started to weaken, which I compensated with animated presentations and automatic speech generation. In 2018, I obtained my PhD with a paper towards an objective measurement of wine quality via instrumental analysis. Today, I keep myself busy with making a popularized presentation of my PhD, the writing of a book about wine, and a few lectures about ALS. I also organize regularly wine tastings with friends and will rework my research data. During my studies, I had an adapted student room, but now, I am always at home, where I have 3 times a week physical therapy and 2 times a week speech therapy. I also use frequently a platform elevator and hoist, a douche and toilet chair, and an adaptable bed downstairs. I regularly stand upright at my standing table and have a PAB budget to pay my assistants. I live already more than 18 years with ALS, and there are, despite my progressive setback, still no signs that I will die soon. The most relevant factor for a longer life with ALS is to avoid depression. This is, with progressive paralysis, not easy, but such a mental state might accelerate the death of neurons. Organize a meaningful, daily and planned occupation. For Danny is this the operations of the Belgian ALS Liga. For Stephen was, and for me is, this science. It is obviously not advisable to target physical goals, and your objectives should be achievable. Also, you have to maintain the contact with family and friends you find important. Do not hesitate to take the initiative yourself. There are only a few who will do it themselves, especially as they, because of your illness, don't know what to expect and are afraid. You obviously have to aim for maximal independence, but don't feel too bad to use aiding devices if they become necessary. You probably will need a cane for standing and walking, before switching over to a rollator and a manual wheelchair. Finally, you will end up in an electrical wheelchair. As long as you can stand upright, you can use supports when going to the toilet and taking a shower, but a douche chair will probably become unavoidable. Install an elevator instead of mounting stairs to reach the basement and upper floor, and save the back of your assistant with a hoist. Do not hesitate to use and time a large keyboard and speech computer, and eventually deploy a breathing aid. In short, use all available aiding devices, like we see with the long-living examples, and order them in time. The strive for independence doesn't have to stop you from accepting assistance from someone else. Beside assistance during eating and with transfers, help also exists for financial matters and communication with the health insurance, income tax authorities, and the Flemish Vlaams voor Personen met een Handicap. As Flemish ALS patient, you can after all benefit from a lot advantages, like a PAB budget to pay helping hands. However, be patient, not only with your assistants, but also with yourself. Activities, which you use to execute fast, does either take much more time or are even unfeasible. Effective movement, speech and breathing will increase your independence. Also, activating muscles that you can stimulate only a little or no more is advisable. Therefore, train regularly and use eventually devices like a standing table. Plan also weekly physical and speech therapy. However, do not try to look for your physical limits. You will prevent not only unnecessary frustrations, but you furthermore avoid probably fatal cellular stress. Additionally, pay also attention to your alimentation and weight without becoming fanatic.